Okay, so a large part of what we're going into right now is getting to know yourself rather than looking outside to what's going on. And if you're empathetic like I am, this has been a very dead air period here. As an empath, you absorb energy. So this is part of getting to know how you operate. And of course, if you're listening to me, you are vibrating similarly, and you are an empath. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that it is very important for you to begin to see yourself as the overseer of your circumstances. You are the one who is behind these things, and perhaps on a larger scale, you connected to the divine. You are put where you need to be because of your transmutational abilities with energy. So it's very important that you don't view yourself as a victim. Now, you need to understand where energy is coming from and whether it's coming from yourself or others. And this was a very important lesson for me, and it's so overarching in my life that I continue to get waves of realization of, my goodness, this is not even mine. Once you realize things are separate from you, it's easier to let them flow through your system. I will absorb people's stubbornness to thoughts and opinions, which is part of the whole people-pleasing aspect. You don't want to step on toes because you realize how connected certain thoughts are to people's identities, and if they were to get crushed, their whole concept of reality would be in flux, and therefore it would give them a breakdown. Okay, that's why you people please. That's the empathetic people pleaser. Okay, it's not necessarily so that things can go so great for you all the time. You identify with the pain the person would feel if their reality was shattered. You also absorb pains, which are, emotional pain stuck in people's body, emotions stuck in people's body. You will absorb those. So you will start feeling the pain yourself. When people experience the karma that they're supposed to experience, maybe even specifically from you being in their life, you also absorb that karma. And so you begin to feel as the person feels when they're learning their lessons of how to be more empathetic and realize that their decisions were very hurtful. You absorb those feelings, emotions, when someone realizes that the path that they were on, the choices they were making, the decisions they've made led to their own sort of demise. Okay? So where am I going with all this? I think that what we're ultimately learning from this, the empathy goes into the whole idea of a consumed perspective. So if you are extremely empathetic, that's the whole idea of not wanting to rock someone's boat, because you understand where they're coming from, and everyone is looking for really, the release from pain, finding the point where they feel good. And so labeling things good or bad needs to become something of the past. Labeling things in general needs to become something of the past, because when we all see that we are the captains of our own ship, co-creating with the divine aspect, everything has a purpose, everything has a reason, everything is in flux, and everything is trying to find its way back to wholeness in some convoluted way or another. So what intention does is it gives potency to energy. So you can take anything that people have considered good or bad, and with intention, you become the captain of the ship over the idea, person, place, thing, energy, whatever it is. This is the idea in alchemy behind chemicalization of the spirit. Okay. You're able to take the ether and you're able to turn it into an actual etheric chemical that has potency in your environment based on intention. Okay. Now, this ties into the whole getting to know yourself, right? Because we want to find out our histories. We want to find out who's the good guy and who's the bad guy in our galactic heritage and what are we made of. And people freaking out like, oh, you know, these writings are bad because this person had bad intention, and or this person's from, you know, the evil Draco, or this person, we're part Draco, we're part whatever. Okay, so at the end of the day, look at it this way. Like, if your father or mother were evil, does that make you evil? And did they have the capacity to do better? Yes, absolutely. Because just because something is in a genetic pattern, genetics can easily change. And we realize this by knowing that higher dimensional beings can shapeshift. Okay, so a lot of things have been given credit only to the dark side, the draconian shapeshifters, right? You know, cymatics will show you that, I might get this experiment wrong, but just with the simple use of sound vibration, you can actually change DNA so much that you can turn, I believe it was salamander zygotes into frogs, something like that. So with vibration, you can change your very DNA. So I can only assume that, you know, these higher dimensional beings, they can come to you in any form, because they're vibrating so high that they could be in the form of an energy ball, and then they can also use intention to choose the form that they most wish to embody, hopefully for the greatest and highest good, if they're such high energy. So you know, with that being said, I think it's really interesting that 70% of people don't even know their blood type. And there's a very interesting thing that happens is usually you don't realize that you're a different blood type unless you get pregnant. You're a female that gets pregnant and you find out that your blood type isn't compatible with most people's blood type. Well, what the heck is that about? You know, I wasn't taught that in school. I lived my whole life to, you know, whatever age I first got pregnant, in my 30s, and had no idea that my blood wasn't compatible with other people's blood. And going into documentaries that I've watched, and I'm not going to have the correct references here, but it was the University of Wisconsin has found definitively that the human species is actually made of two separate DNAs. Okay? And in nature, the only organism where, or the only species that has the blood mixing issue is the mule, and the mule is part donkey, part horse. So I want to preface this by saying, are some mules better than others? No, absolutely not. They're a hybrid, and therefore, some are more horse and some are more mule, and sometimes they can't mix. There's a barrier in the blood because it wasn't natural. I don't know the genesis of the mule. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if humans were doing that. I didn't look into that. So that's something that I should research further. But I just think it's interesting that without warning, I go into the doctor's office and I'm told that I need to get something called RhoGAM so that my blood doesn't mix with the baby's blood. And so, and I would love to get more into the RhoGAM because there's a lot to that. I got the initial shot when I was told, and on the car ride home, I felt like my head was leaving the car and going into the sky, and I had to really center myself. And when I got home, I drank a ton of detox tea, and that's when I began my research on what even just happened there. Yeah. So in the ancient Sumerian texts, the Enuma Elish, they talk about taking the primitive species that was already on Earth, and this is what is considered to be from the writings, the Anunnaki, and mixing their own genetic material with that. And I think that we have our answer right there. I don't think, there's a lot of speculation were the Anunnaki reptilian, and there's been so much mixing of blood in the whole history of the universe. And I've heard the story where the Anunnaki were part reptilian, but they were a mixture of humanoid and reptilian. And so, you could get really lost in this. And on top of that whole idea, we also have a very limited understanding of DNA and blood anyways. But what I really think that the RH factor is, because when you see it in all of the ruling classes, supposed ruling classes, like all of the royals are supposedly RH negative, all of the presidents, except for maybe one, I think, was RH negative. Many of the entertainers who are, owned by these classes that want to rule us, most of the entertainers putting these ideas and thought forms into our head are RH negative. So, what does that mean? For me, it means that line was kept pure because those were the Anunnaki, and they didn't want to mix with their race that they made to mine their gold and to do the work for them. I think that the RH positive just simply means that was, because that's the marker for the Rhesus, came from the primitive man, the I don't want to use the term monkey, because we're all a mix at this point, unless you're sitting on a throne somewhere ruling other people. We're all a big mix, and what blood is it's got all the answers to these questions. It's got a certain vibrational frequency, and that's really all you need to know. You don't need to know the history of what's going on out there. You need to know what your blood is, why it's here, and what it's been through. You don't even need to know what it's been through unless in the context of what you're here to do now. But I will tell you, like, just from my research, what I've found is that the A type, regardless of whether you're positive or negative, the A is the original human. The origins of the original human are not here on Earth. They're from Lyra. And we have the warriors from Lyra, according to what I've heard of galactic history. See if it resonates with you. Okay. The warriors of Lyra were the ones who chose when a part of space exploded and it went both into the Draco Empire and Lyra. It reignited the war between them. And so Draco said, well, the only way that we're going to have peace is if you bow down to our queen and we can take some of your children. Okay. Well, humans are mammals. Some of them said yes. And thank God we left those weaklings behind. The ones who said, hell no, left. And according to some accounts, went to the Pleiades. And their main focus was protecting their young. Okay? And I'm sure you're resonating with this by now. And then the Pleiadians even were overwhelmed because they weren't exactly fighting this war. And they said, you know what, you guys are getting too aggressive and you gotta go. And so that was the seeding of Atlantis in Lemuria. Okay, so this is the actual history of our original template of humans, the starseed humans coming to Earth. Okay, so that's the A. Now the B, so the A could be seen as like divine masculine because they're the warriors. And wow, isn't that, I'm sorry, if you have kids and you're in this enlightenment business, well, what are you doing right now? History repeats itself, right? Okay, so B is more the divine feminine lineage, like Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene. It's not the warrior, it's more so the protector. It's more so, let's try to learn more about our intentions and our intellect so that we can protect what is sacred. Let's try to come from a non-combative, more, I don't want to say passive, more loving space. Okay, and that's not to say that all of Sirius is loving, because they've been infiltrated as well, and they have some very strong warriors as far as I've heard and read. But the B is less combative, and it's more in tune with the divine feminine energies, wanting to be of service in love. Okay, then we have the O, and the O is tied into what I can see in my research is the Anunnaki. Okay, so of course the positive represents the humans that developed here on Earth, and that's not to put them down, because geneticists were looking at the evolution of humans, and somewhere within the last 5,000 of years, people jumped up astronomically in abilities, and that's, I believe, because of this upgrade that was given to us by the Anunnaki for their own benefit. And of course, the Anunnaki some were more drawn towards positive and light, and some were drawn more towards negative. So, the O negative would be the original ruling class. Now, what do I think about the royals and about the shape-shifting and about the rumors that they're Draco-reptilian? I think that there's masking going on, because I think that they want us to think that they're more of a threat, or just include them more in our story than we need to. Such as like where oh my words, the ruler of Russia, whatever his name is, the little man there with lots of power, when he was visiting Queen Elizabeth, he said that, Queen Elizabeth shapeshifted to show his power. And I was saying higher dimensional beings can shapeshift. I don't think that she's really a higher dimensional being. She just wanted to exert her power. I think that what the reptilians do, what the snake people do, and this is talked about in the Emerald Tablets, is if you allow them in some form, whether you give them rites in ritual, either knowingly or unknowingly, or you start aligning with more negative thoughts and negative actions, you let the desires and the addictions that man can succumb to overcome you. You partake in a lot of drink, which can let negative entities enter you through the back of the neck. Then these beings can enter you and start taking control over your chakras. And yes, I think it's quite possible that some of the royals overtook the original royals, and that's something that I need to go into further research about, because I've heard this from other people where the original royals were overtaken by these Draco Reptilian. And so they're probably not. What I've heard from certain SSP experiencers, the secret space program, is that Draco Reptilians have like green, bluish blood. That's nothing. It's not going to type like any of the types that we know. So I don't think that negative marker that people think make them a serpent really makes them a serpent. I think that idea has been inserted into our minds by these shapeshifters that are taking over our chakras unknowingly. But again, it's all about intention. Can you take back control? Absolutely. And I think one of the best quotes is from Carl Jung, who said, the history of the world is not contained in large books. It's, and I'm gonna butcher this, but it's contained in the spirit, in your blood. So everything that you need to know is contained within. That's why I'm telling you what I've come to know. And why wouldn't they tell us that we're a hybridized species? Well, because then I think that we would start to catch on to, well, why is that? Because there's still the aspect of control and rulership. And then once we realize that, we can claim personal autonomy and sovereignty, and that would be the end of that. So thank you for listening. Holy crap, that was a long one.